Hi Peter, how you going?
Well, thank you yourself. Just give me a moment. I'm just fixing up my screen.
No worries.
Oh, that's better. You can hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly actually.
Oh, good.
Very good. So, is this your first time doing a little interview online?
Yeah, for something like this, it is. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I
obviously,
mean,
being on Zoom and stuff before and having meetings is generally perfectly normal.
yeah.
But doing something like this where I'm the person speaking the most,
Hmm.
a little bit like a job interview, I guess. That's all right, though.
Yeah. Job interview for a job you already have.
Sorry?
A job interview for a job you already have.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. So I think it'd be good. Like, I've seen a couple of videos and stuff before, and they're pretty laid back, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
they're quite casual, and I think that's probably the best sort of approach because if you make them either too serious or too formalized, then people become disinterested. So it needs
Mm.
to be a bit more pure and a bit more real.
Yeah, beautiful. And as you can probably see, Nikki was originally meant to take this, but I'm stepping into the role. I'm a
Yep.
little out of practice since last year, but this will be a nice smooth entry back into running these kinds of things. I did actually have a question. I know you've been obviously in the education space for like you said 26 years.
Yeah.
I was wondering how long you've been at Cobbitty for.
Pretty close to 10 years, I
Nice.
think. Yeah.
Cool. Very good to know.
Yeah, so I started there, like we moved out in this way about that time ago, and my eldest daughter and stuff started in kindergarten the first day I started there too. So
Really?
yeah, that's roughly how I remember it, 10 years or so.
Mm. That's so lovely. And what year are they in now?
My oldest is in year 10 and my youngest is in year 9.
Mm. Very nice. Beautiful. Well, it's cool you got to be, I suppose, involved with them even at the school. Um,
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice having them there. Like we live locally and stuff. So literally, Cobbitty is our local school from where we live.
mm,
So it worked out well that obviously I applied for a few jobs and stuff close by when we moved out this way. And this one came up and it was great. And it sort of worked out really well for all of us because I got to be a teacher at a school where my kids got to go to.
mm,
I live around the corner from work. We start at 9:30.
hmm.
I can leave we have to be there by 9, obviously, but if I really need to, I can leave at 8:50 and get there
Okay.
in plenty of time. Not that that rarely happens,
Mm.
but it's convenient and practical.
That's so good. I used to have to commute to work for like an hour and a half drive.
Yeah.
And since I've moved a lot closer and it's like the best part of my life is not having to go so
Yeah.
far for work.
I would agree with that. It's about having a bit of perspective because I've been to places where I did live in work in Maryland and stuff for a while, so I was traveling for up to an hour every day, depending on whether you left 5 minutes too early or 5 minutes too late. Um, and that gets you after a while, like an hour there, an hour on the way back,
It really
in the
does.
traffic, sitting in the sun.
Hmm.
Now I can do things and stuff in the afternoon, like we're a 9:30 to 3:30 school.
Hmm.
But finishing up and stuff after that, I can be home by 4 o'clock if I really need to. Get to the kids' sports training, do what I need to do, still get a bit of sunlight, especially during summertime.
Hmm.
It's good, very practical, very convenient.
I think it makes a big difference as well. Like even having that like extra bit of time, I feel so much more grateful for it now, especially since before like I was spending so much time in traffic and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes you appreciate the things that are really important to you too, because work like your work and my work can um, engulf you, and you can like if I wanted to, I could be working right now,
Hmm.
and you would be working non-stop. So it's nice to sort of put yourself in that situation where you are close to home, and when you do go home, you can stop and switch off and do what you're required to do as a member of the family too.
Definitely. If you need to get water, do anything like that, feel free. We're gonna
Yeah,
start like just at 7 o'clock. We're usually very right on the dot.
yeah,
And
I got
then
water running.
Yeah, beautiful. And then yeah, we'll get into it. And we do always, I suppose have the opportunity for people in the audience to ask questions if they've got anything on their mind. Um,
Yep.
and in terms of audience, quite a few Life Skills Go customers. Obviously, it's a great forum to learn from other schools and other educators.
Yeah.
So yeah, we
Awesome.
really appreciate you joining on tonight as well.
No problems at all. I think it's not that it's been something that I've been putting off, but I remember emailing you initially and talking about how um, it would be nice to collect some more data and have some more evidence to be
Mm,
able to talk about it well. And, I don't even know if we're at that point yet where we've got enough to be super, super confident with it, but I do know that it's making a difference.
mhm,
And I do know that it's helping out, and the data that we've collected so far has been very beneficial for us as a school. To be able to make some good accommodations and stuff for some of the kids that we've got.
mhm. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a process. And at the end of the day, like there's always a lot going on, especially in a school environment. And I think it's just about starting sometimes. Uh,
Yeah.
and we're always
Starting
looking at,
and then also just asking questions too, like asking questions and evaluating and going, okay, well, am I getting out of this? Am I getting out of what I really want to get out of it?
mm,
Um, and then, the good thing about you guys is that you take the feedback and stuff on board. So when people are talking to you, they're taking the information and stuff in and then responding to it accordingly too.
yeah, definitely. No, and I think yeah, it's one point collecting the data, it's another thing being able to do something with it.
Yeah, no, exactly right.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, I do have our office dog here. So if you hear any barking or moving around, he is sort of wandering around. He's got a cone on his head at the moment too. Uh,
Oh,
so he's got the cone of shame, poor thing.
yeah. I
Uh,
have a dog too, so if someone walks past, you'll hear him. And two teenage daughters too that have a pupil-free day tomorrow, so they're in a good mood. So
nice.
you might hear them walking up and down the hallway singing.
Yeah, no problem. That's life, really. I mean, often I think we'll get people joining into the webinar, might have to cook dinner, you've got things going on.
Yeah.
It's all part of it, really. What kind of dog do you have?
A little cavoodle.
Oh, cute. We've
Yeah.
got in the office, Nikki's dog, is Thompson, and he's a big Labradoodle, so like a standard.
Yeah.
But he doesn't quite realize how big he is. So
Is he curly haired, like curly head?
yeah,
Yeah.
he's got brown hair, he's got little curly hair, and it's super cute. It's really nice. We sort of joke that he's like our well-being dog.
Yeah, we have a wellbeing dog. We had one last year, then we have another one this term as well that comes out one day a week. And gee, they do a good job. Even
Mm,
the dogs themselves do a good job, but the trainers and stuff that come along with them are phenomenal.
yeah.
Like they're really good at just picking up on kids' cues and responding well and jumping in kind of where they're needed to. So yeah, they're worth their weight in gold, those guys.
And it's always like the best thing ever when I get to visit a school and then, they have a well-being dog and I'm like, oh, it's so nice. I feel
Yeah,
like
it is good.
it really adds to the atmosphere in a way.
It does. It does. Like when it first came in, it was a bit of a novelty, but now it's just sort of something that happens. And
Mm,
the day of the week and stuff that they come in, they stand at the front gate and stuff with us and
mm,
greet all the kids, and the kids love it and they respond really well. And then the dog coming in the classroom is just normal now. Like it's not so much a novelty. It's exciting for the
mm.
kids, but they just have a quick look. Yeah, the dog's here, and continue on with their work.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, sorry to cut you off, but I'm gonna get us started because it's 7 o'clock. So I would firstly like to start those of you by thanking those of you who are joining us tonight, and for those who are watching in the future. Tonight we're doing a deep dive with Peter, and this is about Cobbitty Public School. If you have any questions throughout tonight's webinar, please feel free to pop them into the chat or the Q&A section. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their continued connection to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people joining today. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we jump in. This is recorded and we will be sharing it out for those who aren't able to join live. And it is an interactive webinar, as I mentioned. So if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. And we really appreciate if you could just take a few moments at the end of the webinar to fill out our survey. If there's something you would like us to cover in the future, we run lots of different webinars. We ran one last night on screen smart students, and we've got a few really good ones planned for this year. So if there's anything you'd like us to cover specifically, please feel free to pop that in the survey or the chat. Beautiful. I will stop sharing my screen. I'd love to get started by, Peter, would you be able to give us a little context into Cobbitty Public School? I'd love to
Yeah,
know a little bit about the area you're in, how many students you've got and how long you've been using Life Skills Go.
no problems. So Cobbitty Public School, we're situated in southwest Sydney, near Camden's probably the best way to explain it. We have about 380 students at our school this year, 16 classes. We're situated like in a growing community. So when I started there 10 years ago, we basically had kids living on big properties with plenty of animals. They were driving around in bobcats and doing those types of things. Nowadays, a lot of that property has been turned into housing development. Lots of houses being put in there. With those houses, you have a lot of rental houses being put in with assisted living. And obviously, that changes the dynamic and stuff of our kids within our context too. Our population has increased dramatically over the last couple of years. Still considered a small school in our area, which is nice, but it's definitely changing. We started Life Skills Go. I think we just won the stage team about 3 years ago. I think it was 2023. We started with the trial that got advertised. We used it within a stage team. It worked out really well. Some people liked it. Our school, in terms of our planning, had an idea of sort of where we wanted to go, but at that point in time, it wasn't. It was a priority, but it wasn't at the forefront of what we were doing. We had other things and stuff that we were trying to organize and get sorted. The following year, after the first trial, we had another classroom teacher come up to me and say she hadn't been on class for a while and came back and said, "Oh, do you remember that check-in program that we used to use before? Can I get it again for my class?" And that's how our program started up again. I think I hassled you guys for a second trial, and we were lucky enough to get access to that. It started with that classroom teacher. She took it on board and basically just grew from there. When she was using it and using it well and collecting that data, I was obviously liaising with her and providing her with some supports. But she was kind of the driver of it all because when she was talking about it in the staff room with her peers and her kids were coming out of the classroom, smiling, looking happy, feeling heard, that just sort of spread very, very quickly. And it gave us, I guess, the data and stuff. Like we felt as though we understood where our kids were going from and what they're all about and had a good understanding of them. And I guess the life skills kind of data, once we first started, reinforced that knowledge and the fact that we knew our kids and we knew our kids quite well. But having the data to back that up is quite reassuring, and it sort of tells you as a school that you're going in the right direction too. So it's now embedded across all of our classes, and it's just part of our daily sort of routine. Most of the classes just check in the morning. People use their individual devices to check in. Other classroom teachers just have it on the big whiteboard at the front, and kids come up and check in. Some classes like to do it privately, where the kids put in their own responses. Other classes are happy to do it open and it's public. And the kids just sort of respond really well. It's very natural. There's not a lot of expectation on how often it needs to be done. When we first did start and we introduced it across the school, we said maybe 2 to 3 times a week would be a recommendation. But like anything that needs to be embedded and anything that's going to be useful, you can't force people to do it without them realizing that it's actually good value for themselves. So we gave a bit of flexibility, and we still have that with the teachers now too. So, if they're not checking in or they're busy with an assembly or we had orienteering and stuff at school today. So if those things come up and you don't get the opportunity to check in every day, that's okay. We can live without that data for that day. But I think more often than not, the teachers are checking in. I think at the end of last year, we had over 9,000 check-ins per term, something like that on average. All of our kids checked in at least once throughout all of those terms, and the data would probably say that they checked in at least once a week for all the kids in our context. And I guess it just sort of supported what we understood about our kids. it helped us work a little bit smarter, made things a little bit easy for us, and it was a nice smooth transition.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think one of your points about having different setups for different classrooms is really valuable to us. Like, there's so many different ways that you can run the check-in. And the reason we obviously provide training on all the different methods is because classroom teachers will usually find what's most effective for their students. And I think, it gets to a point where they tend to maybe try a couple different methods, whether it's on the interactive whiteboard or on individual devices. And either the students or the teacher will naturally find what feels best for them. Um,
Yeah, that's right.
so I
There's,
think,
like I said before, there's no expectation on how it's supposed to be done within their classroom. The teachers make those choices, and the kids make those choices too.
Mhm.
And I know to begin with, it did take people not a lot of time, maybe 15 to 20 minutes to sort of get it done. And it's more the process of clicking the buttons and knowing what the ready to learn scale and stuff means and knowing what those emotions need. But there's opportunities and there's teaching resources there to support the teachers in teaching those things because it's not just pressing a button and then away you go for the rest of the day. It's actually understanding why you're pressing that button and as a student, how the teacher can help you work your way through those things.
yeah, definitely. I'm gonna jump straight into my next question. Um, Now, as I was preparing for this, I did have a little look through your school excellence plan, and I noted that it identified, student well-being and attendance as a continued focus, as for a lot of schools. I'm curious as to why it has been elevated as a strategic priority for this general period.
Yeah, well, I think it's a fairly clear, we all have a fairly clear understanding that, and that acknowledgement that learning doesn't take place without the wellbeing support. So if you don't have, those management strategies and stuff in place and those wellbeing practices that are conducive across the school, then there's no point in even teaching any of that content from the syllabus because nothing's going to be learned. With the ongoing changes, I guess, in the student mental health, their engagement and the necessity behind supporting all of those things, the range of complexities that we have within our context, and every context is becoming increasingly more difficult. I've been teaching for 26 years, and then there's still days that I have where something happens with a particular kid, a good behavior or a tricky behavior, and you look at your colleague and you say, I've never had that before. Where did that come from? What happened there? And you're constantly asking yourself those sorts of questions. So, we see well-being as being a major priority across our school, and we understand that for the other strategic directions to work well in terms of the learning and succeeding, that this needs to be in place to support all that, not just the students, but also to the teachers too. So, we've found within our in our plan really strong links between well-being, attendance, and learning, and also like our behavior incidents that we've got across the school our community feedback with checking in with parents, talking to staff. You can see that there's a need for a prioritizing wellbeing support. And I think really, as a school, we have that kind of that desire to build a positive kind of good culture and supporting all of our students. We're very proud of the fact that we are, yes, a small school, but every kid is known, valued, and sort of cared for. They walk through the front gates with a smile on their face. Myself and the other executive are usually at the gates, and we know, pretty much all of them by name and by first name, including siblings and parents and things like that. So when they're walking into the school, it just sets up that culture to be a nice type of place where well-being is important. We give teachers and stuff that flexibility to make good decisions around well-being, to support their own classroom, and not just say everything has to be curriculum, curriculum, curriculum. That's all important. That's great. But sometimes if your class is having a bad day or you're having a bad day yourself and you need to give yourself 10 minutes to reset, some of those brain breaks and stuff that you guys include, and just the idea of having a check-in and having someone listen to you is super important. It just builds that nice positive environment. And I guess it supports other, sort of broader educational goals too.
Mm, definitely. And I think, that's the reality of being a human as well. You're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days. And I think it's nice. Your school sounds amazing, firstly. I think,
Yeah, it is. It is. We're very, very lucky. Like
yeah.
it's a variety of things. It's the community, it's the staff, most importantly. they're good people that are there. And when good people do good things, great results and stuff happen. So we're lucky with the context and stuff that we got. But, like I said earlier, our school 10 years ago was not so normal. It was a little bit different to every other school, but we're much more normalized now. And in terms of our clientele and the kids and stuff that we've got there, we're pretty much exactly the same as everybody else.
Mm, beautiful. And, in that sort of reflection space, I mentioned that you've been an educator for 26 years. I'd love to know what sort of changes you've noticed for student well-being or student emotional needs, across your career.
Heaps of changes.
Yeah.
Just that increase in complexity and of that emotional and mental health issues among kids. I don't know whether in the past we weren't as good as teachers as identifying some of those things and being aware of them, whether the research and the pedagogy behind that has informed us to make better observations. I also just think that with the way the society and stuff is growing in itself, with the increasing needs and those increasing demands on parents and also teachers and schools, it does become very very quite complex. You
Mm,
can see that the anxiety and things like that are just much more visible these days too. It's not like I think people in the past were very good at hiding it. I think maybe it was always there, but it was sort of kind of pushed to the side now. People are encouraged, particularly with feeling stressed and feeling anxious and stuff about things, or feeling angry and frustrated, or feeling happy. They're encouraged to present those feelings to everybody else, and everyone else kind of has that responsibility of trying to acknowledge them too. Kids are getting great, I think, at verbalizing their kind of emotional intelligence on how they're feeling. They're probably getting too great, where they'll come up to you and say, this happened because I was feeling angry, and it kind of justifies that negative behavior from their perspective. But really, it doesn't. So, for some kids, it's got sort of gone too far down the other end, but that's okay. I think we've just seen, like, over the 26 years, a greater diversity of student backgrounds and needs, and that rise in social media, the digital pressures, the not being able to switch off, particularly with some of our older kids. I've been talking to a couple of parents about, in the olden days when you did have a bit of an issue, you could go home, not talk to anyone for a day or two, and then come back to it, and then before you know it, you're back out on the footy field kicking the ball around, and everything's okay. Whereas kids these days, they don't get an opportunity to switch off. So if there is an issue, or they are feeling angry or upset about something, that it doesn't stop. It's just ongoing. So I think that's a big change. You can see that there's definitely that need for more targeted, evidence-based sort of support. And I think schools are getting better at implementing some of those strategies. We've got a great learning support team where we are at Cobbitty. People that do a fantastic job. They just go above and beyond to support, all the kids, but particularly those kids that are our pointy-head kids that need that little bit of extra assistance.
mm,
And I guess that shift also too from being reactive to situations from schools has changed over time. So instead of being so reactive to things, we're much more proactive and trying to, think about the thinking and take two steps forward before we, be two steps ahead of everything before we're making decisions and stuff about things. So that obviously helps.
yeah, definitely. And I think, with the current state of the situation the students are sort of growing up in, so much is so different, from even when I was young and when I was in school. And I think, we were doing a webinar last year, and the guest we had, said, contemporary issues also need contemporary solutions. And I think that sums up everything that we really talk about. And I suppose on that point, I'd love to know how the Life Skills Go data is starting to help inform your school-wide strategies.
Yeah, I think it just provides real time insight into what's happening within our classrooms and what's happening with kids. I know that in terms of, like I said before, we had over 9,000 check-ins each term. Um, Everyone participating in terms of all of our kids. I think we had just over, on average, about 70% of kids ready to learn. That's been one of our goals in terms of increasing that percentage, because that means there's obviously 30% that are not ready to learn. And sometimes that's more about explaining to those kids, okay, well, if you aren't feeling ready to learn and you're bored or you're tired or you're angry or you're frustrated or you're scared, how are you going to help yourself in terms of getting over those things because it's not going to be the teacher or a responsible adult that's going to be there all the time for you. We can provide you with those platforms and those strategies to help you out. And I think that's quite necessary. The data, I guess, helps us identify trends within our school and areas needing that targeted support. I know that, when I check in via the executive dashboard, I generally find out, the class sort of summaries and find out what's going on within the classes. And the data that comes up, like the randomized data to say that this particular kid normally checks in as being happy, 90% of the time today they check in as being sad or whatever it is that's unusual for that person, allows me to make a quick modification and go and check in with that kid. I do use the pinpoint sort of scenario where I pinpoint a few kids within the context that I want to keep an eye on, or kids that have been struggling and stuff a little bit. So I make sure that I check in with that kind of data. So the executives dashboard, like the data's there. The more you look, the more you find. And you can spend hours and hours and stuff on there looking at some fantastic bits of information. Um, and it's great, but I guess you just sort of find what's useful for you and start small. Like you don't have to use the whole lot of the information. You just use components of it and go, okay, well, this is working for me. And then something else will sort of automatically pop up and you'll go, all right, well, how can I use this to help myself and stuff out as well too. So I think it just sort of supports our big decisions that we make across the school as part of the executive, and it provides those big decisions with concrete evidence to be able to back that up because we can't just make the assumption that, okay, well, we're going to put this practice into place or that practice into place because we think these things are happening. When you've got that data there to support those decisions, then people jump on board very, very quickly. And it kind of justifies sort of where you're going to. And then most importantly, I guess it enables you to be able to monitor yourself against those decisions and stuff that you're making. So if you're putting something into place, you've got the data there to say, okay, well, that's why we should start it. That's why we should use it. And then you've also got the ongoing data to say, hey, this is working or this is not working. And that's okay too. And then, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's exactly what we hope happens, data informed strategies and being able to have the confidence that you're heading in the right direction, like with the data as evidence. And I suppose you mentioned earlier your behavior and attendance information. I'd love to know how you're working towards triangulating that sort of emotion, behavior, and attendance data to also support your interventions and strategies.
Yeah, so through cross-checking like the Life Skills Go data and our data within School Byte, so cross-checking the check-ins, cross-checking daily attendance, and cross-checking the incidents within our system, you have that triangulated data. I know that at the end of last year, we had three-way interviews, and all the teachers asked for some data or some information that they could utilize, and then some people found the termly reports that triangulated all that data for them. And that was great, particularly for our stage three sort of cohort, where teachers would take those things to those interviews and say, okay, well, you've been checking in as being bored and tired or whatever it might be. I provided you with these strategies. I can also see on those days where you are bored and tired that you've had a couple of incidents. On those days where you've checked in as being happy and things have been going well, there's no incidents and stuff that align with that. You can see that data and stuff is there, and being able to access it and make those correlations between, I guess, well-being, behavior, and attendance has been really important for us. Um, it also gives us an opportunity when you do have that kind of data to be able to provide, intervention for students that are showing, multiple concerns. So if they've got on the weekend they're visiting, staying with their mum or they're staying with their dad or at a different household and they're coming in on a Monday and every Monday they're checking in as being sad or tired or upset and they're also having a behavior incident or they're away every Monday as well. It helps us analyze that information and go, okay, well, what can we do to put in some supports for this kid and for the family? But then also on the other side, you have the positive sort of side too, where things are going nice and smooth, and you have a kid that has, a 99% attendance rate or a 100% attendance rate, and every day they're checking in as happy, and that's reassuring for the classroom teacher because they're obviously doing a great job, making the kid feel comfortable and wanting to come to school every day. And when they're checking in like that, and checking in as being happy or content or having 5 stars ready to learn, and having that 100% attendance is fantastic too. So it gives an opportunity for, I guess, for our staff to sort of collaborate and have those sort of discussions. We utilize a lot of the information, a lot of the data within our stage meetings and executive meetings, not all the time, but just every so often, or sort of when it pops up, or we feel as though it's necessary. Like I said before, there's no commitment or restrictions and stuff around how we use the Life Skills Go platform. It's just sort of more about, okay, well, we've got these basic things that we want to make sure that we do well in terms of increasing that readiness to learn. That's our main goal. And then everything else that comes with it is an additional bonus too.
Mm, definitely. And I think one of the things I really like that you just said is also about celebrating um those achievements and being able to have that full holistic picture of that student. I think without the check-in data, you would just see that that student had really great attendance, which is definitely something to celebrate. But also being able to sort of correlate that with other things is such a nice way of providing a bit more of a holistic picture of that student as well.
Yeah. Again, like the more you look, the more you find. Like, we've had days where kids have had multiple incidents, and
Mm.
then you go back and you look at their chart and you realize, okay, for the 3 days before that, they might have been away one day and then they've checked in as being angry or frustrated for 2 days straight. And obviously the teachers had those interventions within the classroom, but then they're having issues out in the playground. So, often when you go back and you analyze why these things and stuff are happening or what's going on for this little kid, the data's there, the information's there for you. You just need to look for it and find it.
Definitely. Um, I'd love to know, you said, the journey at the start of using Life Skills Go was a little on and off. I'd love to know when you started getting into the habit, how did you help to embed check-ins across classrooms without feeling as though it was another thing or additional pressure for staff?
Yeah, I think we kind of simplified things for people. We just integrated check-ins within existing classroom routines because people were already doing like they were naturally doing check-ins themselves. Maybe informally where they were doing like morning circles or little knuckles and stuff or high fives at the door, that kind of stuff. We try to just keep things simple and very quick to complete. We understand the increasing demands of teachers these days. There's a lot going on. Um, and I think we also just empowered the teachers to make a good decision for themselves and knowing that, when they start the day, if they need to spend that 10 minutes of checking in with their kids or telling a story or getting something off their chest or providing them with some learning about some sort of emotional regulation, we empower them to make those decisions themselves. And that just oozes out in the staff room when they're having conversations. So they'll come in and say, oh, this morning this happened or that happened, or a kid mentioned that, they weren't feeling great. So this is what we did. Sometimes it's the teacher's not feeling so great. And so this is what I did as part of that morning sort of routine in terms of the check-in. And it just works out well. Like we've provided PL and stuff for the staff at the beginning of the year. We did like the part of the executive type of training with the whole staff, which basically just gave people an opportunity to explore the platform and find things that they haven't seen before. And that worked out really well. Again, there was no pressure behind that. It was just more people having a bit of a play around, having a look at some of the data, and then people asking questions themselves and going, "Hey, I found this information, or this is interesting. What about this? Can you find this? Can you find that?" And that seemed to work really well.
Mm.
Um, I guess just emphasizing. I think you don't even need to emphasize. I think the teachers just understand the benefits of that student well-being and that learning and that check-in and how important it is for their daily practice because they know when they're doing those things well, it just works great. I went into a class yesterday and I walked in and I was sitting there at the front about to mark the roll and the teacher had already basically put into that routine that the kids came in, they settled themselves down at their desk and they came and checked in on the board and everything was just happening in front of me without me even realizing it was happening. And like I went to turn around to go and mark the board, and then 15 kids have already checked in. And then the other kids are telling the other kids to say, hey, you haven't checked in yet, up you go. But it's not a big deal. It just was very natural. It was very calm. It was very quiet, and it just worked very, very smoothly. I was really impressed by how that teacher had set that up in their classroom. And that happens in a lot of our classrooms at our school. We're very lucky that teachers care and they want to do well and they've got this platform to be able to do those things and they utilize it well without those sort of external pressures of coming in to say, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that. There's that flexibility around lots of things.
Definitely. And I think as you're sort of embedding it into your habits or routine, however many times you're doing the check-in, I'd love to know how you're working towards ensuring that check-ins remain meaningful rather than just a tick a box or a routine type of thing.
Yeah, I think we make sure that we, regularly review and update the check-in questions and the methods and stuff around them. We've got people that will constantly come up to me or the other executive and say, you know what, this week we need to add in another emotional check-in. There's a huge range to choose from. I think to begin with, we started with six and then we cut back down to four because six was too many options. And then from four, we sort of gone to five. Different classes work at different levels rather than working on a sort of a stage base or a K to 2 and 3 to 6 base. We've got individual teachers coming up and saying, can you add this for me or add that for me? And it's the system is set up where that's fairly easy to do. It's not that complicated. In fact, many of the teachers can start doing those things themselves now, where when I look on our platform, I can see that every class has something slightly different. So it might just be based on a new emotion that the teacher's introducing or a new emotion that a kid has expressed and then providing some learning around that and then using that within our platform to be able to have that as a check-in. That's worked really well. And I think just providing that space for kids to have that genuine reflection and also student voice because it empowers them to be heard. There's big discussions around, just because you check in as being happy or sad or whatever it might be, it doesn't mean that the teacher's just going to drop everything that they're doing and automatically come running over to you and give you, 50 minutes of attention. It's not going to work that way. It's just a way of acknowledging that you're feeling this way. That's okay. The teacher will provide you with some strategies to get yourself ready to learn collectively and then maybe individually as well. And then it just gives the teachers that platform to be able to check in with some of those kids a little bit later on. And knowing that, some kids require a little bit more effort than others. That's, how we've kind of made sure that, those check-ins do remain meaningful. Um, I think we've trained the staff to respond, really well to the data and stuff that they're collecting. Again, it's not just, a bunch of numbers that we're looking at. It's using it to have impact on your learning. It's like using the data and going, it's like a good PL when you go to something and then you think to yourself, you know what, I can walk into the classroom tomorrow and I can use that. That's
Mm.
what you want. And so that I think the data gives that to teachers. It gives, I know from my perspective as an AP and I look after, some of the wellbeing, not all of it. We have that collective responsibility. But when you do see something and you find something from the data, you can respond well, knowing that you're going to have a bit of an impact. It's always nice to be able to cross-check that data a little bit later on to say, yes, the interventions and stuff that I have put in place have made a difference for this kid. But it's not just because you make one change that you're all of a sudden going to forget about that person. You're going to continue monitoring what's going on and sort of see how things are going too. So I think we just really just to make it easy for people, just we wanted to, avoid making those check-ins a task. It's just something related more to engagement and something that we just do.
Definitely. And, on an individual student level, I'd love to know if you could share an example where the data from Life Skills Go supported an earlier intervention for a student.
Yeah, I know. Like I said to you before, I was sitting in the classroom the other day where all those kids were just checking in themselves, and when they were checking in themselves, I was just quite impressed by how they were doing it. And all the kids had sat down on the floor. I was doing a music and dance lesson, which was interesting for me. And a kid was sitting at their desk, and the kid was sitting at his desk, and I didn't respond too much. I just sort of let it go, and I thought, okay, well, he's obviously needing a little bit of help. He did actually get up and come and check in himself when another kid called out his name, and he checked in as being as not being too well, as being angry and upset. His readiness to learn was good. It was funny because he actually clicked on 3 stars ready to learn, and then he went to submit it and then realized, no, you know what, I'm going to change it to 3.5 stars. So he did that and then submitted it and then he went back down and sat in his seat. So it was really empowering for that individual to be able to come up and go, you know what, I'm not feeling the best without me even saying anything to him. It was like that eye contact to go, you know what, I hear you. I see how you've checked in here, bud. I'm going to give you a little bit of space. And that's exactly what we did. I started my lesson. I went into the lesson, and after a while, he just basically picked himself up after giving him a little bit of time. I didn't even have a conversation with him. It was just him needing a little bit more time to get himself ready to learn. And if I didn't have him accessing that information or doing that check-in, that I would have made the assumption that he was, being a little bit cheeky or not concentrating on what he was doing. My tone would have been completely different. The way I handled the situation would have been completely different too. And basically, the platform did all the work for me. I didn't have to do too much, and the kid did all the work as well because obviously that classroom teacher had set up that situation where Even though he was still feeling angry and frustrated and he was sitting away from everybody else, he still felt confident enough to be able to go up and check in himself
Mm.
and do those things and go, you know what? I'm here. I am somewhat ready to learn. I'm not 5 stars ready to learn, but I'm here. I'm listening to the teacher speak. I'm not ready to engage in stuff in the lesson yet, but maybe I will do that later. And that worked really well for that individual kid. I know that, across the stages or a bigger sort of context, as I mentioned before, with stage three. When we were collecting some of their data, we found out that a lot of the kids were checking in as being bored and tired. And this had sort of some of our links to some of our school bites incidents too. And the staff basically just used that data to talk to parents and students and promoted that accountability and that responsibility and that shared responsibility, I guess, too, because obviously the teacher can't just say to them, okay, well, you checked in as bored or being sad, and now because you're in year five and year six, you have to work your way through that and work it out yourself. No, the teacher provides those lessons and that information about how I can support you. But when we had those conversations with our three-way interviews, I remember walking past a few people and hearing some of those conversations to say, you know what, for 3 weeks straight, Tony checked in as being tired. What's been happening at home? And then mum and dad will talk about them being on their devices all night. And then they've obviously created a plan where they'll start going to bed earlier. Then I know that kids were saying that they were feeling bored or they were feeling a little bit unenthusiastic in the morning. So the stage three team decided to do fitness every morning, and that started off their day. And then you could see that their data changed very, very quickly. And it worked out really well for those stage teachers and those teams too. And I also remember as a funny sort of thing that when they were doing those three-way interviews and the teachers were talking about the data and showing the kids the data and most importantly showing the parents the data, that triangulated information that the parents responded really positively to that approach as well to say, yep, you know what, you agree with the teacher, you are allowed to say that you're feeling bored or you're feeling tired. And, it's part of your responsibility to get yourself into that ready to learn space. And these are the things that your teacher's helping you with. And I remember lots of parents and stuff nodding in agreement with the teachers too. So it was nice to have that consistency in terms of the approach and having the staff and the parents on board and being on the same page.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you shared multiple great stories there, and I guess the way that you're using the data is different in every situation. But specifically that first story is just the perfect example of self-regulation. You know, it doesn't, and I think even what you mentioned earlier about not having to rush to um, students who check in an emotional overload or heightened state of emotion. Sometimes it's also about, in a way, teaching them those self-regulation skills and um, in a way that also helps to develop their resilience.
Yeah,
Um,
it definitely does, and I must give credit to it's not just myself or the executive, it's the teachers that are doing all the hard work.
yeah.
They're the people that are making this work. They're the people that are making the biggest difference for our students. And that teacher that I had the other day that had set that system up and that in place, I was super impressed. I was in awe of what had happened in such a short period of time. And there are a few tricky kids and stuff in that class, but the way that she had them set up and the way that they were doing their check-in, you can see that it worked and it worked well for that context and how she enabled those kids to openly put those feelings in front of everybody else. And they didn't even, like, the kids didn't even react to a kid feeling angry or upset. They just went, okay, let's move on. Let's get ourselves ready to learn. Let's do our morning routine or our check-in. Let's do a bit of a brain break or play a bit of a game. Let's get ourselves ready and away we go. So it's just nice to be able to work in a sort of a context where you have people who want to do that and want to do that well, and they do it, pretty much every day. But also, have a platform to be able to use that enables that to happen so successfully too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it is ultimately that whole school approach. It's one thing coming from a leadership team, but it's another thing also being supported by everyone makes a big difference. And um, I'd love to know how the leadership team and also the classroom teachers are using those check-ins to help influence classrooms or whole school decisions, both on a daily basis and also on a longer period basis.
Yeah, I think the classroom teachers are great at using that data and that information quite quickly There are specific teachers and certain children and stuff that when they do check in as being a particular sort of emotional check-in where it's something reasonably negative, they know that they need to respond straight away and they give that student their time. It's about knowing what our kids need and responding well to that. And there are situations where you can say, all right, I'll check in with you a little bit later on, or you might do a whole class sort of type lesson around a certain type of emotion and acknowledging that it's okay for people to feel that way and maybe talking about your own stories about how you felt tired or angry or bored or whatever it might be, and creating some honesty and stuff about those things and that realization that it happens to everybody and everybody deals with it slightly differently and it's okay to feel those ways, feel that way, and what we can do together as a little class or as a little community is that we can help each other out. And the teachers just empower themselves to make those decisions too. So it's not like, we're all wandering around and making sure that everyone's doing their check-ins. If they feel as though they need to pick up their kids and go for a walk in the garden and look for butterflies, then they will do that. If the teachers need to, turn the lights off in the classroom and crank up the air conditioning, to change the sort of mindset and the way that people are thinking, they will do those things. So, for the teachers and stuff to be able to look at their daily sort of data and respond to that accordingly and have that flexibility around all those things is really important within our sort of context. And they all seem to be doing that well on slightly different levels for a big variety of kids. And it seems to be working in pretty much all contexts too. So lots of different ranges and lots of different flexibility and stuff as well. In terms of the school and I guess the executive about making those big decisions is that we have the data to back ourselves up, like I said before, where, when we are making big decisions, again, it's not people, like myself that are not on class all the time. I'm on class for a good chunk of RFF, but I'm not there daily doing those types of routines. The biggest advocates for these sorts of programs and for what's happening within the classroom are the classroom teachers. They're the ones that are doing all the hard work, like I said before and giving them opportunities and stuff to share the information and stuff that they've found and the data that they've collected and then going, okay, well, this worked well for us, so how about we incorporate it in a slightly bigger sort of level, but not go too big too quickly. Just take those sort of baby steps because if you want something done well, you're going to have to give it time and embed it in your practice so it doesn't become a burden. It's just something that we kind of do and it's okay not to do it and stuff all the time. It's just a habit that we've gotten into to help ourselves out.
Yeah, definitely. And on that point, I'd love to know, seeing as you were at Cobbitty before you started using Life Skills Go, I'd love to know if you've noticed any changes within the students or the community, or what sort of surprised you about really implementing Life Skills Go.
I think what sort of surprised me was how quickly the staff adapted and embraced the tool. Um, all it took was one classroom teacher to remember that we had used it before, and then all of a sudden they were using it and then talking really positively about it. And then other people were asking lots of questions about what are you doing and why are you doing this and where are you getting that information from? And then can I have access to it? It seems to be working well for your kids. So, those individual teachers and also those individual students were the biggest sellers and the biggest advocates for the program. Um, I think just sort of the depth of data that you can collect has been enormous, and I've said it numerous times tonight that the more you look, the more you're going to find. So you can spend ages and ages on a bit of a data track and get yourself lost a little bit, but you have to remember, I guess, what your purpose is and what information and stuff you're looking for, and direct your data towards that. It surprised me, I guess, the openness and the positive student engagement from the kids and how open and upfront they are with checking in publicly and not being ashamed and stuff by feeling different ways. It's very natural for kids to be a variety of different emotions and stuff throughout the morning. And in terms of their readiness to learn, it's also a variety of different levels. I think that value on that real time sort of data and giving the teachers the opportunity to have some of those timely sort of interventions is fantastic. That's been a bit of a surprise in how well teachers have reacted to the data that they've been collecting and how quickly they've done that. And often they're reacting to that data without reacting positively to that data before the executive or before myself even can have a look at that data. They've already made changes. So you might go and talk to people and say, oh, look, I've noticed this or I've noticed that. And I'm basically 3 or 4 days behind what the teachers are already doing because they've already analyzed the data themselves and go, well, how can I respond to that? And they've responded positively. And you can see that the data is already changing by the time you react to it.
Mm.
And I think another thing and stuff that surprised us is just that increased collaboration and stuff among staff and how well they've sold it to each other and how well people start utilizing it when it's conversation and stuff in the staff room or, when you walk in or you walk past the class and you see them doing some cool things in the morning and they're doing their check-in, people are going to ask questions and that naturally just sort of works well itself.
Mm. Definitely. And I suppose as we sort of wrap up, I'd love to know what advice or practical step would you recommend for schools who are either exploring something new or who are early in their journey?
Yeah, I think I would advise people just to start small, like maybe pilot it with one class or a couple of classes or people that are interested in doing it. Because if you've got people that are interested in doing it and you give them a bit of flexibility around it, it will sell itself.
Mm.
And the teachers and everyone else will start to understand how important collecting that information is and how well you can respond to it. um, I guess to engage your staff really early about, what the purpose of it is and providing that clear communication about the expectations around things and what the purpose is. Provide that simple training for people so they understand what's going on. It's not like, here's a platform, go ahead, start clicking a couple of buttons, away you go. Giving them that hands-on experience, maybe possibly showing them some data and stuff maybe collected from some other schools or some generalized sort of data about what we can do as a school to what data we can access and how we can utilize it. Just start embedding some of those check-ins into those existing routines. It's probably what most classrooms are already doing anyway. It's just a formalized way of doing those things. Collect collect the initial data and then sort of build that confidence within yourself that the initial data is going to guide your ongoing sort of steps. So you're going to collect some information, then go, oh, you know what, we've noticed this. So once you've noticed that, then you're going to change your approach slightly. And once you've changed your approach, collect that data again, then go, oh, now we've noticed that. And let's sort of readjust as we're sort of going along. Um, and I guess you want to foster those teachers and stuff that are enthusiastic about it and make them your leaders, make them the people that are going to sell the product, not sell the product, but sell the platform and stuff to everybody else. Because if you've got people that are passionate about things, that just basically oozes towards other people, and other people grab onto that naturally. And if you're doing some good things in your classroom, it's like an art lesson. If someone's got some art hanging up on the wall and you go, that looks great, I want to steal that idea. It's the same for well-being. If you see people doing some good things and good practices, why not take it on board too?
Yeah, definitely. I think such good advice. And I think you didn't just give a little bit of advice about starting, but taking it step by step. Once you've got that initial data, it doesn't have to be an all in at once. You don't have to spend hours diving into it. And as you said, the more you look, the more you find.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so it'll come naturally. And I think as you're more curious about specific things, there might be more information you need to look into, but very, very valuable insights. I just want to say a huge thank you to you for giving your time. I really, really appreciate it. And at Life Skills Go, we really appreciate your engagement with the platform and the way that you reach out when you need support. Um, I really hope to maybe visit Cobbitty. If you do another dance and movement class, let me know. Um,
I can't promise anything spectacular during my dance and music lessons, but I'll try my best.
Okay, well, I would actually love to come out in person, so we can talk about that later. But it sounds really amazing, and just keep doing what you guys are doing. And yeah, thank you so much for joining on, and thank you for those of you who were able to join in live. Peter will be sending out the recording in case you want to share it with any family and friends. Um, you did a spectacular job, and we really appreciate you giving this time. And I hope you have a really lovely rest of your night.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Have a lovely night.
You too. Bye bye.